From debt to wealth is not just a financial journey, it is an emotional, psychological, and deeply personal transformation. And the books that changed my life along the way did far more than teach tactics. They rewired the way I understood responsibility, opportunity, discipline, and the inner stories that determine our financial destiny. When I was buried in debt, drowning under the weight of bills, shame, anxiety, and constant pressure, I thought money problems were purely mathematical. I believed I simply needed more income or better budgeting. But the more I read, the more I realized that debt lives in the mind long before it appears in bank accounts. It grows from habits, beliefs, avoidance patterns, childhood conditioning, and the quiet lies we tell ourselves to survive daily stress. And wealth, in contrast, begins in perception, how we define enough, how we frame choices, how we respond to constraints, and how we view our own agency. The books that changed my life guided me not only out of financial darkness, but toward a sense of empowerment that made wealth building feel not just possible, but inevitable. They became companions, teachers, and sometimes brutal mirrors that forced me to confront the behaviors keeping me stuck. The first book that shook me awake was Your Money or Your Life by Vicki Robin and Joe Dominguez, a masterpiece that forced me to confront the true cost of my spending not in dollars, but in life energy. This book made me see that every swipe of the card, every impulsive purchase, every unconscious bill was really an exchange of my time, health, and finite existence. Debt no longer looked like a number. It looked like lost freedom. That realization ignited a shift from passive survival to intentional design. The book taught me to track every expense, evaluate every habit, and calculate what my spending was actually giving me in emotional return. For the first time, money became something I could observe instead of something that controlled me. The next transformative read was The Total Money Makeover by Dave Ramsey, a book that did not comfort me but confronted me. Ramsey's tone is unapologetically direct, sometimes uncomfortably so. But that was exactly what I needed. He showed me that debt is not simply a circumstance, it is a system of behaviors, and escaping it requires structure, discipline, and urgency. His debt snowball method gave me a psychological weapon: quick wins. Instead of feeling overwhelmed, I felt momentum. Small debts disappeared, confidence grew, the shame began to lift. This book taught me that wealth is built by winning tiny battles long before winning the war. As I progressed, The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel shifted my mindset from mechanics to emotions. I learned that my financial decisions had never been rational. They were reactions to fear, stress, comparison, and insecurity. Housel taught me that money is not about intelligence, but behavior, and behavior is shaped by experience, upbringing, and emotion. This book helped me forgive myself for past mistakes and focus on building habits rather than judging myself for not knowing better sooner. It gave me mental calmness, the ability to stay steady, the awareness to avoid panic, and the patience to let good choices compound. Another life-changing book was Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, which challenged everything I believed about income and wealth. Until then, I thought paying off debt meant working harder at a job. Kiyosaki introduced the idea that wealth comes from assets, not effort, from ownership, not overtime. That concept was electrifying. It shifted my focus from eliminating debt to building a future where debt would never trap me again. I began thinking like an investor, not merely a bill payer. I started studying real estate, passive income, cash flow, and leverage, not as fantasies, but as skills I could learn. The book awakened ambition, possibility, and a new financial identity. But the book that fundamentally changed my ability to execute was Atomic Habits by James Clear. Before reading it, I was stuck in a repeating cycle, reading financial books, feeling inspired, and then returning to old habits. Clear taught me that transformation comes from environment design, identity shifts, and micro-actions, not motivation. I learned how to make good habits easier, bad habits harder, and daily discipline automatic. This book turned wealth building from an emotional roller coaster into a predictable system. It upgraded my behavior, which upgraded my finances. Another indispensable guide was The Simple Path to Wealth by J.L. Collins, which taught me how to invest confidently rather than fearfully. Before reading it, the stock market felt like a casino. After reading it, the market looked like a long-term compounding machine built for patient, consistent investors. Collins demystified index funds, explained risk, removed intimidation, and highlighted the most important rule of investing: stay the course. This book helped me shift from constantly worrying about money to building a portfolio that quietly grew in the background, even as I focused on other parts of life. My journey also transformed when I encountered The Millionaire Next Door by Thomas J. Stanley and William D. Danko. The book destroyed every stereotype I held about wealthy people. I learned that true wealth is invisible, that millionaires are frugal, humble, intentional, and disciplined. They build wealth through quiet consistency, not flashy consumption. Reading this book helped me release the pressure to look successful and instead focus on being financially secure. It cured me of lifestyle inflation, which had silently fueled my debt for years. Another unexpected but crucial book was I Will Teach You to Be Rich by Ramit Sethi, which brought levity, practicality, and modern relevance into the process. Sethi's systems-based approach automation, conscious spending, negotiation, investing helped me create a financial ecosystem that ran smoothly without constant effort. His concept of money dials allowed me to spend guilt-free on what I love while ruthlessly cutting what doesn't matter. For the first time, wealth felt joyful, not restrictive. But my emotional relationship with debt didn't fully heal until I read The Mountain Is You by Brianna Wiest, a book not about money at all but about self-sabotage. It helped me understand why I avoided confronting debt, why I spent impulsively, why I resisted discipline, and why I feared success. This book gave me emotional insight that financial books alone could not. It taught me that wealth requires not just strategy, but self-awareness. It taught me that the mountain was not debt, the mountain was me. The final book that completed my transformation was Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, which connected all the previous lessons into a deeper truth. Wealth begins with belief. Not wishful thinking, but functional belief, the kind that shapes action, strengthens discipline, fuels persistence, and expands identity. Hill taught me that every wealthy person had once been someone who simply decided to stop living reactively and start living intentionally. This book became the philosophical backbone of my wealth journey. Together, these books formed a ladder out of debt and into a place of stability, clarity, and abundance. They taught me to shift from chaos to structure, from emotion to awareness, from scarcity to possibility, and from consumer to creator. They did not just change my finances, they changed my life, my identity, my habits, and my vision for what is possible. And they continue to guide me, each lesson compounding quietly in service of a future shaped by the accumulation of new identities, new behaviors, and new levels of emotional strength that emerged from each book's lesson, carrying me from a life defined by financial fear into a life shaped by clarity, intention, and expanding opportunity. In this second phase of the journey, what becomes most important is not the books themselves, but how their teachings interact, reinforce one another, and ultimately reshape a person from the inside out. The transition from debt to wealth is never a single breakthrough. It is a layered transformation built through psychological rewiring, behavioral consistency, emotional healing, and strategic design. Each book offered a piece of the puzzle, but the real magic began when those pieces started forming a coherent system that governed my decisions, reactions, habits, and long-term vision. The first major transformation was regaining a sense of agency, something debt had quietly stolen from me. Debt makes life feel predetermined, as though no choice you make can meaningfully alter your trajectory. But the books taught me the opposite, that wealth is not a condition, it is a craft. Your Money or Your Life taught awareness. Total Money Makeover taught discipline. The Psychology of Money taught emotional clarity. Together, they helped me reclaim the belief that I could influence my future. This shift from helplessness to authorship was foundational. Without agency, no amount of strategy matters. With agency, every small action begins compounding. The next transformation was behavioral re-engineering, initiated by Atomic Habits. Before reading it, I would swing between bursts of motivation and long stretches of complacency. But once I learned how habits actually form identity, environment, cues, friction, and repetition, I finally understood how to create financial behavior that sustained itself. I automated bills. I automated investing. I simplified my accounts. I removed triggers for impulsive spending. Over time, wealth building stopped being a fight against my own impulses and became the default state of my life. My struggles were never about money. They were about systems. Books taught me to build the systems. Another critical transformation was escaping the emotional gravity of debt, something no spreadsheet could fix. Debt carries shame, and shame leads to avoidance, and avoidance leads to accumulated chaos. The Mountain Is You helped me understand why I sabotaged myself, why I numbed with spending, why I feared improvement. This emotional clarity unlocked discipline in a way financial logic never could. You cannot build wealth while emotionally clinging to the behaviors that created struggle. Healing became a financial strategy. As the emotional fog lifted, the next transformation was shifting from scarcity to opportunity. Rich Dad, Poor Dad played a pivotal role here. It introduced me to ideas I had never encountered: assets, cash flow, leverage, ownership, financial independence. These concepts gave me a new vocabulary for wealth, and vocabulary became vision. I stopped seeing money as a finite resource and began seeing it as a tool. I stopped focusing on working harder and started focusing on building smarter. That shift in worldview created room for ambition to grow. Then came the transformation that the simple path to wealth ignited: confidence in investing. Before reading it, I was terrified of the stock market. After reading it, I realized that simplicity, not sophistication, is what builds wealth over time. Index funds, long-term focus, automated contributions, low fees, staying the course. This clarity dismantled years of fear and replaced it with a calm, repeatable plan. The wild emotional swings that once governed my financial decisions quieted, giving compounding the space to work. Alongside this came a transformation sparked by The Millionaire Next Door, redefining what wealth looks like. I had internalized society's lie that wealth is visible: cars, clothes, lifestyle. This book revealed the truth. Wealth hides. Wealth lives in restraint, not display. Wealth lives in discipline, not drama. Wealth is built quietly by people who do not feel the need to prove anything. This realization dissolved my urge to impress others. It redirected resources from image to investment. It freed me from lifestyle inflation, the silent enemy of wealth. A profound transformation emerged from I Will Teach You to Be Rich, building a financial ecosystem that supports itself. Sethi's approach was the opposite of restrictive. It was liberating. It taught me that money should serve joy, not guilt. I built systems for spending consciously and saving consistently. I negotiated bills. I automated every possible step. I created a flow that required almost no willpower, removing friction from every part of my financial life. Wealth began to feel accessible, even fun. The next transformation was philosophical, born from Think and Grow Rich, aligning belief with behavior. Hill taught me that desire is not indulgent, it is directional, that clarity creates results, that persistence compounds, that the mind must believe in the outcome before the body can pursue it wholeheartedly. This book helped me set long-term goals without fear of disappointment. It helped me develop a vision of myself not as someone escaping debt but as someone building wealth, and once that identity crystallized, every decision began aligning with it. All of these transformations converged into a deeper understanding. Debt and wealth are not opposite ends of a financial spectrum. They are opposite ends of a psychological spectrum. Debt thrives on denial, impulse, avoidance, and emotional reactivity. Wealth thrives on clarity, discipline, intention, and emotional resilience. Books did not change my bank account directly, they changed the patterns that governed it. and once the patterns changed, the numbers followed. The final transformation, the one still unfolding, is the shift from seeking stability to building abundance. Once debt faded and savings grew, I began focusing not just on safety nets, but on opportunity. Entrepreneurship, index investing, real estate, skill building, and alternative income streams. The books continue guiding me into this stage, where wealth is no longer about escape, but expansion, of agency, of options, of identity. In the end, the books that changed my life did not simply teach me how to manage money, they taught me how to manage myself. They revealed that financial transformation is a psychological evolution, a behavioral refinement, an emotional healing, and a strategic awakening. Debt taught me survival. Books taught me possibility. And through that possibility, I discovered that wealth is not something you find, it is something you build, deliberately, patiently, and continuously, until your life reflects the person you chose to become rather than the circumstances you once endured. Completed.